My name is Lauren Pierce, and I'm 32 years old. The night my engagement ended started the same way a lot of ordinary nights did. Me on the couch in leggings, laptop open, looking at apartments we were never going to live in. You know the kind of scrolling you do when you're half dreaming, half budgeting? New builds with white kitchens and two perfect staging photos. I was checking square footage against our future, calculating where the hypothetical crib would go in 5 years, where the dog bed would sit, how many steps it would take to get from the bedroom to the coffee maker on Monday mornings. On the coffee table in front of me were the wedding invitation samples we'd ordered last week. Ivory cardstock, gold foil, our names in looping script. Mine and his. My boyfriend, no, my fiancé, Ryan Mitchell, 29. We'd been together 3 years, engaged for 6 months. The venue deposit was paid. The photographer booked. My mom had a Pinterest board that could probably power a small country. Everything was moving forward exactly the way it was supposed to. I was staring at a listing for a 2-bedroom with ridiculous floor-to-ceiling windows when I heard it. His footsteps in the hallway, then the soft thump of his bag hitting the entryway rug. "Hey," I called without looking up. "How was work? I found 3 different apartments where you could actually have your home office and not be in our future nursery." Silence. Then his voice closer. "Lauren, we need to have a serious conversation about our relationship structure." That made me look up. He was standing at the edge of the living room, not sitting next to me on the couch like he usually did, but lowering himself into the chair across from me. The one people choose when they're about to say something they can't take back. My stomach dipped. Everyone talks about that feeling. I've been thinking, look, that never brings good news. "Okay," I said slowly, closing the laptop. "What's going on?" He exhaled like he'd rehearsed this in the mirror. "I've been doing a lot of self-discovery work lately. Reading, learning, watching educational content. And I need to tell you something important about who I am." Those words never end well. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. "All right," I said. "Tell me." He wet his lips. "I'm polyamorous." The room went very quiet. I could hear the upstairs neighbor's TV through the ceiling. A car passing outside, the heating system clicking, everything except my own thoughts, which just stalled. "You're," I repeated, buying time, "polyamorous." He nodded, relief flickering over his face like he'd finally dropped a heavy weight. "Yeah, it's not just about wanting an open relationship, it's who I've always been. I just didn't have the framework to understand it before." I stared at him. This was the same man who had picked out venues with me and argued over chair covers. The same man who'd cried when he saw my engagement ring on my hand for the first time. Now he was talking about frameworks. "So," I said carefully, "you want to open the relationship." "It's not just opening it," he said, already sounding defensive. "I want us to practice ethical polyamory, multiple committed relationships that coexist. It's actually a really healthy and evolved way to love when you understand it properly." I set the laptop aside and leaned forward. "This is coming out of nowhere for me, Ryan. Where is this from?" He bristled. "It's not coming from anywhere. This is who I've always been. I just didn't have the language before." Society programs us to suppress these parts of ourselves. "Ryan," I said softly, "we've been together 3 years. We've talked about marriage, kids, mortgages. You've never once mentioned anything like this." "Because monogamy is literally a patriarchal construct," he said, words sounding practiced. "It's used to control people and limit human connection. I've been learning so much about kitchen table polyamory and relationship anarchy and—" "Okay, hang on." I held up a hand. "You realize you're talking about fundamentally changing what our relationship is, right? Not just like adding a hobby." He shook his head. "It's not changing anything. It's expanding it. We'd still be together. We'd still love each other. There'd just be more love. No one person can meet all your needs anyway." Something in me went very calm then. That strange kind of calm when your brain clicks into crisis mode. "You're right," I said quietly. "One person can't meet every need. That's why people have friends, family, community." I met his eyes. "But romantically, sexually, I'm monogamous. That's not something I'm willing to change." His expression hardened. "You won't even consider it?" "That's pretty closed-minded, Lauren." "It's not closed-minded to know what I want in a relationship," I said. "I'm not monogamous by default. It's what I choose, on purpose." "But how do you know?" he pushed. "You've never tried polyamory. You might actually love it." I blinked at him. "How do you know you're poly if you've never actually practiced it? We've been monogamous for 3 years." He stood up and started pacing, hands slicing the air. "This is exactly the resistance I was worried about. You're trying to control how I love people." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I kept my tone even. Saying I need monogamy isn't controlling you. It's stating what I need in order to stay in this relationship. You can love however you want, but I get to decide what kind of relationship I'm in. So you're just shutting this down, he snapped. You won't even think about it? Think about what? I asked. You're asking me to change my core relationship values. That's not a small request, Ryan. He grabbed his phone from his pocket and pulled something up with shaking fingers. Look, I follow these polyamory educators on TikTok and Instagram. They talk about how if your partner refuses to even consider ethical non-monogamy, that's a red flag. It means they don't actually care about your happiness or growth. A tiny bitter laugh escaped me. Or it means we're incompatible in a really fundamental way. We're not incompatible, he insisted. We're perfect together. You just need to evolve past outdated relationship structures. I don't think monogamy is outdated, I said. It works for millions of people. It works for me. His shoulders sank. For a second, I saw the man who'd held me when my dad was in the hospital. The man who'd danced with me barefoot in this living room when we got the email that the venue was available. Then he swallowed and said, I can't be monogamous anymore. I need this to be happy. The words landed like a clean slice. No drama. Just a line drawn straight through everything we'd been building. Okay, I said quietly. That's it? He demanded. Okay? What do you want me to say? My voice shook now. You're telling me you need something I can't give you. That sucks for both of us, but it's the truth. So you're choosing monogamy over me, he said, eyes bright with anger. Over 3 years together. That's not what's happening, I whispered. You're choosing polyamory over me, Ryan. It's the same equation from the other side. No, it's not the same. His voice rose. I'm asking you to grow with me. You're just being rigid and refusing to change. Asking someone to change their core relationship needs isn't growth, I said. It's incompatibility. If you actually loved me, he shot back, you'd at least try. If you actually loved me, I replied, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. You wouldn't ask me to. We just stared at each other then. I could feel something invisible tearing, slow and awful. Finally, he said, then I guess we're done. I'm not going to suppress who I am for anyone. I'm not asking you to suppress anything, I said. I'm saying I can't be in that kind of relationship. Fine, then it's over. He went to the bedroom. I sat on the couch, hands clasped so tightly my knuckles ached, listening to drawers open and close, the rustle of fabric, the metallic slide of a zipper. 20 minutes earlier, I'd been looking at apartments for our future. Now my fiancé was packing an overnight bag like we were strangers. He came back out with the duffel slung over his shoulder. He looked weirdly lighter, like he'd already done the hardest part. I'll stay at Connor's tonight, he said. We can figure out the apartment and everything else later. Sure, I managed. Obviously, the wedding's canceled, he added, not quite meeting my eyes. I'll call my parents tomorrow. Okay. He grabbed his keys, then paused at the door and looked back at me. You know, this really shows who you are. I thought you were different, more evolved. There were at least 10 things I could have said. Instead, I just stared at him. He shook his head and left. The door clicked shut. For a long time, I didn't move. The apartment hummed quietly around me. The fridge, the faint rush of pipes in the wall, a car driving by outside. On the coffee table, one of the invitation samples lay face up. Together with their families, Lauren Pierce and Ryan Mitchell joyfully invite you. I reached out, picked it up, and stared at our names. The gold foil caught the light, making everything look almost pretty. Then, very gently, I tore it in half. I didn't cry, not yet. I just sat there in the middle of the life we'd been building, feeling the first crack open, and knowing deep down that this was only the beginning. The next morning, my phone started buzzing before my alarm. For a second, I forgot. I woke up in an empty bed, the indentation on his side still there, and my brain tried to tell me he'd just gotten up early to make coffee. Then I opened my eyes and saw his half of the closet, empty hangers, a gap where his jackets had been. Memory snapped back into place like a rubber band. I rolled over and grabbed my phone from the nightstand. There it was, a stack of notifications. Ryan, hey, can we talk? I think we both got too emotional last night. I stared at the messages, thumb hovering over the screen. Too emotional. Like he'd suggested we repaint the bathroom and I'd flip the table, not like he'd said, I need multiple girlfriends or I can't be happy, and then walked out with a duffel bag. I set the phone face down and went to brush my teeth instead. The mirror showed puffy eyes and pillow-creased cheeks, engagement ring glinting on my finger like it belonged to someone else. By the time I came back to the bedroom, there was another message. Ryan, I don't think we need to break up. We just need better communication. My chest tightened. I sank onto the edge of the bed and finally typed back, me. About what exactly? You want polyamory. I want monogamy. That's not a communication issue. The typing bubbles appeared almost immediately. Ryan. But maybe we can compromise. Start slow. You'd know about my other partners, but you wouldn't have to meet them right away. A lot of people make it work. I read the text 3 times. My hand actually started to shake. Other partners, plural. The phone rang. He didn't give me time to answer by text. I stared at his name on the screen for 3 full rings before picking up. Hello? Why are you being like this? He said without preamble. His voice was tired and irritated, like I was the one who'd dropped a bomb. You're acting like I'm asking you to do something horrible. You're asking me to be okay with you dating other women while we're engaged, I said. Yes, that qualifies as something I'd consider pretty horrible. You're being really unreasonable right now, Lauren. I closed my eyes, counted to 3. How is knowing what I want unreasonable? My therapist literally said you're showing controlling behaviors, he snapped. Refusing to even explore my needs? That's a red flag. I felt something sharp twist in my chest. Your therapist said that, I asked quietly. Or you told her a version of events and that's what you heard? Same thing, he said. It's really not. He sighed dramatically. You're not even trying to understand. This is what I was afraid of. You shutting down and proving that monogamy is just about ownership for you. It's not about ownership, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. It's about exclusivity. That's literally what monogamy is. So that's it? He said. You're just going to blow up our entire life together because you're too scared to grow? The word scared landed hard. Last night, it had been rigid. This morning, it was controlling and scared. I wondered what the next iteration would be. No, I said. Our life together blew up the second you decided you couldn't be happy unless you were dating other people. I'm just refusing to pretend that doesn't blow it up. He went quiet. I could picture him running a hand through his hair, pacing in Connor's living room, rehearsing arguments from TikTok videos in his head. You know, he said finally, poly couples actually report higher levels of communication and satisfaction. There are studies. You're ignoring actual science because you're stuck in some Disney fantasy. I let out a breath that was almost a laugh. I'm not ignoring science. I'm listening to myself. I don't want this, Ryan. I don't want to go to bed wondering where you are or who you're with while you tell yourself it's all ethical, because I knew about it in advance. So you're done, he said flatly. You're really choosing your fear over me. I'm choosing a relationship structure I can actually live in without losing my mind, I replied. If you can't live in it, that doesn't make either of us villains. It makes us incompatible. I can't believe you're doing this, he muttered. You'll regret it. The call cut out. He'd hung up. An hour later, another text. I want to come by Saturday to get the rest of my stuff. I stared at it for a long time before answering. Me. Okay, Saturday works. Are you sure you don't want me there? My mom asked on the phone Friday night. I could hear dishes clinking faintly in the background of her kitchen. I can come over, just sit quietly in the corner and shoot him death glares. Despite everything, I smiled. I'll be fine, Mom. It's his stuff. He'll grab it and go. You say that like he's capable of just grabbing and going, she snorted. Then her voice softened. You know I'm proud of you, right? For what? For not letting someone talk you out of what you know you need, she said. Wanting monogamy doesn't make you controlling. It's basic honesty. My throat tightened. Diane doesn't agree, I said before I could stop myself. A pause. What did she say? She called you? I deflected. She did, my mom admitted. Told me you broke Ryan's heart because you refused to let him live authentically. I told her if he wanted to date multiple women, he should have figured that out before proposing to you. A small, fierce burst of warmth lit in my chest. You really said that? I absolutely did. I exhaled shakily. Thanks, Mom. Always, honey. After we hung up, I walked through the apartment and boxed up everything that was clearly his. Sweatshirts, shoes, stacks of gaming magazines, the ugly college mug he refused to get rid of. I labeled the boxes with sticky notes so there would be nothing to argue about. I found one of our saved invitation samples half stuck under the couch. For a second, I almost picked it up and smoothed it out. Instead, I slid it into the recycling bin without looking at it again. Saturday came anyway. At 10 on the dot, there was a knock at the door. I braced myself, smoothed my sweatshirt, and opened it. I'd expected Ryan. I hadn't expected a small entourage. His mom, Diane, swept in first, her perfume hitting me before her eyes did. Right behind her was Whitney, his best friend, all sharp eyeliner and sharper opinions. Ryan came last, shoulders hunched, like he already knew this was going to be a scene. Hi, I said, gripping the edge of the door. Come in. Diane didn't answer. She just looked at me, face tightening into something between disappointment and accusation. I cannot believe you're doing this to him, she said, instead of hello. There it was. Good morning, Diane, I replied, stepping back to let them pass. The boxes are in the living room. She ignored that. He comes to you with his authentic feelings trying to grow, and you just slam the door in his face? Do you have any idea how selfish that is? I felt Whitney's eyes on me, glittering with backup dancer energy. Ryan brushed past both of them toward the boxes, not quite meeting my gaze. Is everything here? He asked. Everything I could find, I said. If I missed anything, let me know and I'll set it aside. Diane planted herself between us and the coffee table like she was presiding over a trial. You realize you're throwing away a beautiful relationship because you're too insecure to share, she said. My jaw tightened. I am not insecure, Diane. I'm monogamous. Those aren't the same thing. Whitney snorted. They kind of are, she said. You're obviously threatened by the idea of him with another woman. Yeah, I said. That's literally the point of monogamy. Being exclusive. That's the entire design. Whitney rolled her eyes. Do you even know that polyamorous couples actually have lower divorce rates? It's scientifically proven to be healthier. I glanced at Ryan, wondering if he'd jump in. He kept his head down, taping a box shut. Cool, I said. They should all date each other then. Lauren, Diane said sharply, marriage is about compromise. You don't get everything your way. You share. You adjust. You don't blow up an engagement because your partner is evolving. We're not married, I reminded her, and some things aren't compromisable. This is one of them. Whitney folded her arms. You're really going to throw away a whole wedding over this? My hands were starting to shake. I curled them into fists at my sides. He ended it, I said. I just didn't beg him to stay. Because you don't actually love him, Whitney shot back. If you did, you'd adapt. I looked at Ryan. He still wouldn't look at me. Is that what you think? I asked him quietly. That I don't love you because I won't pretend I'm okay with this? He chewed his lip. My heart stupidly hoped he'd say no, that he'd tell them to back off, that he'd admit this wasn't as simple as them were making it. Instead, he said, eyes on the floor, I think if you loved me enough, you'd at least try. The words landed with surgical precision. Diane nodded, like he'd just given the correct answer. And I think, I said slowly, if you love me enough, you wouldn't ask me to become someone I'm not. Selfish, Diane muttered under her breath. Absolutely selfish. They loaded the boxes in 3 trips. Each time they passed through the doorway, I felt another piece of our old life walking out. Sweatshirts, mugs, his stupid novelty socks, all the evidence that he had once planned to live here, fully, instead of using it as a staging ground for a different future. Whitney and Diane kept up a steady stream of commentary, whispered but loud enough for me to hear. She'll regret this. She doesn't understand real love. Some women just need control more than they need connection. I stood there and took it, palms pressed flat against my thighs so I wouldn't do something useless like cry in front of them. On the last trip, Ryan paused in the doorway, duffel strap cutting into his shoulder. He finally met my eyes. You're really okay with this? He asked. Just throwing away 3 years? I swallowed. The honest answer was no. I wasn't okay. I felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer to the life I'd carefully built in my head. But I also knew what it would feel like to stay and bleed slowly instead. No, I said, I'm not okay with it. But I'm also not going to pretend to be someone I'm not, just to keep the peace. His jaw flexed. So polyamory would make you that miserable? Yes, I said. Would monogamy make you that miserable? He hesitated, and that hesitation gave me every answer I needed. I don't think I can do it anymore, he admitted, not after learning what I've learned. Then yeah, I said softly, we're done. Diane sniffed. Whitney rolled her eyes. Ryan turned and walked down the hallway, the sound of his footsteps fading. The apartment door closed for the second time in 3 days, this time with no promise of him coming back. The silence that followed was deeper, heavier. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by empty spaces where his things had been, and realized something quietly terrifying. This was what choosing myself actually felt like. Not triumphant, not empowered. Just brutally, achingly honest. The silence after they left should have felt like relief. Clean, quiet, like the air after a storm finally moves on. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like standing in the wreckage of a house with no roof, everything exposed, everything raw, everything mine to deal with. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes before I finally moved, wandering around the apartment like a ghost. Every empty space screamed something was missing, and every remaining object whispered some version of this was supposed to be our life. I ended up in the kitchen, staring at the wedding binder sitting on the counter. The binder I didn't have the courage to open. Instead, I turned away and started the dishwasher just so the noise would fill the room. It didn't help. The fallout didn't wait for me to catch my breath. The universe didn't care about timing. My phone buzzed at 11:23 a.m., an email from the wedding venue. "Hi, Lauren. We're reaching out regarding your event reservation for September 28th. My stomach twisted before I even opened it. Non-refundable deposit. Final cancellation deadline. Penalty fees. I skimmed through, each sentence landing like a fresh bruise. A minute later, another email. The photographer, then the caterer, each one chipping away at the fantasy of the wedding we'd been planning for half a year. By noon, I'd lost $3,900 on paper. Money we'd both committed to pay. Money I very much couldn't cover alone. I sat at the kitchen island staring at my phone until the numbers blurred. Then, because life is apparently written by someone who loves dramatic timing, another text from Ryan appeared. Ryan, "Hey, are you home? I forgot 2 hoodies. Can I swing by later?" I didn't respond. Instead, I texted what actually mattered. Me, we need to split the cancellation costs. I've already heard from the venue, photographer, and caterer. Your half comes to $1.95. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Ryan, why should I have to pay anything? You're the one who wouldn't compromise. My mouth fell open. I reread the message several times because surely I misunderstood. Surely he didn't mean that. Me, you gave me an ultimatum, Ryan. Polyamory or breakup. You ended our engagement. We both agreed to these deposits. We split them when we booked. We should split them now. He called instantly. I answered because I was done hiding. Are you serious? He snapped before I could say hello. You're really asking me to pay for a wedding you canceled? I didn't cancel it, I said, gripping the countertop. You said you couldn't be monogamous anymore. That ends a wedding. You could have just tried, he argued. You didn't even try. You're the one who blew everything up. I said from the beginning I'm monogamous, I replied. I didn't change anything. You did. He scoffed. This is exactly why we broke up. You care more about money and logistics than actual feelings. My jaw tightened. My feelings are hurt too, Ryan, I said quietly. But the venue isn't going to accept emotional pain as payment. You're unbelievable, he muttered. Figure it out yourself. Ryan? He hung up. I stared at my phone, pulse pounding in my ears. Then the most ridiculous thing happened. I laughed. Out loud. Sharp, humorless disbelief. Of course he hung up. Of course he accused me of being cold for asking him to honor a commitment. Of course he framed himself as the victim of my boundaries. I sent him the screenshots from the vendors anyway. Then a Venmo request. Then I put my phone face down so I wouldn't stare at it waiting for a reply that wasn't coming. The next few days blurred together. Sad, angry, exhausted days filled with logistical nightmares I didn't sign up for. Calls from vendors confirming cancellations. Email chains asking for signatures. Reminders about deadlines and penalty fees. It felt like I was not just mourning a relationship, but cleaning up after its corpse. On the 4th day, my mom called. Hi, honey, she said gently. I heard from Diane. I groaned. Oh, no. She thinks you ruined her son's life, Mom said in that tone that meant she was rolling her eyes. Apparently you're controlling, close-minded, terrified of growth, and emotionally stunted. I rubbed my forehead. She really said all that? Verbatim, Mom said. I told her if Ryan wanted to date multiple women, he should have figured that out before proposing to my daughter. I blinked. Mom? What? She said. I'm not wrong. A shaky breath escaped me, somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Are you okay? She asked softly. I don't know, I admitted. She was quiet for a moment. Honey, choosing monogamy doesn't make you less evolved. It makes you honest. You're allowed to want what you want. The words hit harder than I expected. I feel like a failure, I whispered, like I couldn't hold it all together. You didn't fail, she said. You told the truth. He's the one who changed the rules halfway through the game. I clutched the phone, eyes burning. I think part of me hoped he'd come back, but not with conditions, not with other women. That hope, she said, is the part that needs the most gentleness. And then I really cried for the first time. Not when Ryan left, not when he took his things, not when Diane tore into me, not when Whitney rolled her eyes. But right then, on the phone with the only person who wasn't trying to twist the story. The reprieve didn't last long, because 2 nights later, at 8:47 p.m., while I was microwaving leftover pasta and trying to pretend I was fine, I got a text. Not from Ryan, from Instagram. Ryan Mitchell tagged you in a photo. My stomach dropped. I opened the app, heart pounding. And there it was. A picture of Ryan and a woman I'd never seen before, her head leaning on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, both smiling like their life together hadn't combusted 12 days earlier. Her caption: "When someone finally gets you new beginnings." I stared at it until the screen went blurry. My microwave beeped behind me, but I didn't move. A minute later, a text from Ryan appeared. "Ryan, her name is Tessa. Thought you should know." No explanation, no context. Just that. I felt like someone had reached inside me and rearranged my organs. Not because he was dating someone else, but because he clearly wasn't hurting the way I was. While I'd been crying on phone calls, canceling vendors, trying to scrape myself off the floor, he'd moved on. Instantly, effortlessly, with a woman willing to join his new ideology. I turned off my phone, closed the curtains, sat down on the couch, and let myself feel every ugly thing I'd been pushing down. Hurt, anger, rejection, relief, strangely enough, because that photo told me something I hadn't been willing to face. He hadn't been choosing truth or authenticity. He'd been choosing novelty. And I'd been the stable life he was bored of. It was an awful revelation, but it was also clarifying. Because if that was what he really wanted, then maybe losing him wasn't losing anything at all. I muted Ryan's Instagram the next morning. I didn't unfollow him. Not yet. I wasn't ready for that kind of surgical removal. But the second I turned off notifications, a strange quietness settled in my chest. Not peace exactly, more like the absence of an alarm that had been blaring for weeks. For a while, my life became split down the middle. Daytime Lauren. Professional. Functioning. Taking meetings. Responding to emails. Drinking coffee like it was a survival mechanism. Nighttime Lauren. A hollow version of herself. Scrolling through wedding cancellations, Venmo requests, sitting unanswered, picking apart 3 years of memories like forensic evidence. Every night, I went to bed alone. Every morning, I woke up with that weird moment where your brain forgets, then remembers, then crashes all over again. Tessa posted more pictures with him, matching coffee cups, walks through a farmer's market, one of him kissing her cheek. I stopped checking after the third one, but the images still crawled under my skin. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was humiliation. We had been engaged. He had been planning a life with me. And then, less than 2 weeks after telling me I wasn't evolved enough, he was playing boyfriend with someone who apparently got him instantly. But the universe wasn't done with me. The breakup shockwaves kept coming. One morning, I got an email from the venue confirming they were processing the cancellation. Another from the caterer asking for a final signature. My bank account shrank by another $600 because catering labor hours counted as partially non-refundable. I forwarded everything to Ryan. No reply. I sent another Venmo request. Ignored. I told myself it didn't matter, that the money wasn't the real wound, but every time I saw those numbers, I felt the aftershocks of a future collapsing. And then, as if the universe wanted one final punchline, Tessa posted something cryptic. Some people think they want polyamory until they actually try it. A day later, Ryan quietly removed every photo of her from his page. I almost laughed. I didn't even have to ask what happened. Some stories write themselves. I was eating lunch at my desk a few days later when my phone buzzed with a message I didn't expect to see. Ryan, hey, can we meet for coffee, please? My stomach dropped, but not in the way it used to. Not fear, not longing, just inevitability. I sat there staring at his message, fingers hovering over the keyboard, thinking, if I say yes, it's not because I want him back, it's because I want answers. Against my better judgment, I typed, me. Fine, when? We agreed on Saturday morning. Neutral ground, public space, easy exits. The whole drive there, I rehearsed what I wasn't going to say. I miss you. I want us back. I'm still hurting. But when I walked in and saw him sitting at the corner table, elbows on the wood, hands wrapped around a mug like he needed it for stability, all the rehearsed lines disappeared. He looked tired, older, heavier in the face, like the weight of his choices had finally settled in. Hey, he said as I sat down. Hi. We stared at each other for a long moment. How are you? He asked. I considered lying. I'm getting there, I said instead. He nodded, swallowing hard. You look good. Ryan, I said softly, what's going on? He exhaled, eyes dropping to the table. I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything. Okay. And I think maybe, he paused, visibly struggling, maybe I was too hasty about the whole poly thing. I blinked. Meaning, I still think I'm poly, he said quickly, as if clarifying would save face. But maybe we could have figured something out. Some kind of compromise. A cold calm washed over me. What kind of compromise? I asked. He hesitated. Like, maybe a don't ask, don't tell arrangement. I do my thing, you do yours. We stay together. I stared at him. That's not a compromise, I said slowly. That's polyamory with extra steps. It wouldn't have to be serious at first, he insisted. You wouldn't have to meet anyone. I'd keep everything separate. And I'd be what? I asked. The stable foundation you come home to after nights with other women? He flinched. Lauren, listen. I am listening, I said, my voice like steel I didn't know I had. And what I'm hearing is that you want all the benefits of a committed partner while leaving yourself open for more. And you want me to just absorb the emotional cost of that. It doesn't have to be emotional, he argued weakly. A lot of people make it work. I leaned back and folded my arms. So that's what this is about? TikTok said it's healthy, so we're supposed to rewrite our entire relationship to match strangers online? His jaw tightened. It wasn't just TikTok. I read books. I followed researchers. For how long? I asked quietly. Silence. Ryan, I said again, how long? He stared at the tail. About 6 weeks. I almost laughed. The same disbelieving sound that escaped me when he'd refused to pay the deposits. 6 weeks, I repeated. 3 years together. An engagement, a wedding planned, and 6 weeks of online content made you throw it all away. He looked up at me then, eyes glassy. I made a mistake, okay? I'm admitting that. What mistake? I asked. Wanting to be poly, or giving me an ultimatum you never thought I'd choose? He looked wounded, like I'd hit something tender. That wasn't fair, he whispered. Neither was ending our engagement because I wouldn't let you date other women. His lips trembled. I miss you, he choked out. I miss what we had. I miss how we were. My heart clenched, but not in the way it used to. Ryan, I said softly, you miss the version of me who didn't question things. The one who agreed with you. The one who moved quietly around your needs. He wiped his eyes. I can change. We can try monogamy again. For real. If we go to therapy. Would that make you happy? I asked. He froze. Would monogamy make you happy long term? A long, painful silence stretched between us. I don't know, he whispered. That's the problem, I said gently. I know what I want. I know who I am. You don't. Not yet. And that's okay. But you can't expect me to stay while you figure it out. I'm not a halfway house for your identity crisis. He dropped his face into his hands. So that's it? We're really done? Yes, I said. We are. We sat there in the hum of the cafe. People talking, milk frothers hissing, spoons clinking, while something older and deeper than heartbreak settled into place. Acceptance. I stood up. Take care of yourself, Ryan. He didn't look up. I walked out without looking back. And for the first time in weeks, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt final. 3 months is a strange amount of time. It's not enough to forget someone you once built entire futures with, but it's long enough to realize the version of them you loved no longer exists. My apartment looks different now. Not dramatically. No big renovations. No new furniture that screams fresh start. Just quieter. Softer. More mine. I moved the couch to face the window instead of the TV. I put a plant in the corner I used to hate, and somehow it stayed alive. I started cooking meals again instead of eating takeout on the floor. Little things. Normal things. Human things. The kind you forget you deserve when you're managing someone else's emotional weather. I see my friends more now. I laugh more. I sleep without waking up at 3 a.m. to check a phone that no longer rings with crisis or ultimatum or guilt. I've even gone on a few dates. Nothing serious, just quiet dinners with men who ask questions instead of testing boundaries. Men who don't use words like framework or ethical or evolved when they really mean I want permission to hurt you without consequences. For the first time in a long time, I feel like myself again. Not the version shaped by someone else's shifting ideology. Not the woman bracing for the next revelation from his algorithm. Just Lauren. About a month into this quiet recovery, I got an unexpected email. From Ryan. It was long. Too long. The kind of email written at 2 a.m. when you're alone and suddenly willing to confront everything you've been avoiding. He wrote about introspection, therapy sessions, realizations, regrets. He said he'd been doing the work, reading, reflecting, understanding where things went wrong. He said he now believed monogamy could work, that maybe he'd rushed into labels, that maybe he'd mistaken validation for identity, that maybe he hadn't been as emotionally mature as he'd thought. He said he could see us building something again, with clearer expectations, mutual understanding, and greater emotional intelligence. He said he wished we could try again. He said he missed me. And for a moment, one tiny moment, my fingers hovered over the keyboard with a softness I didn't expect. Because caring about someone doesn't disappear just because you needed to walk away. But then I sat back, reread the email, and felt something settle inside me, like a puzzle piece finally in place. He wasn't asking for us. He was asking for stability, for a safe landing spot, for a version of life he wanted back because the alternative hurt. And that wasn't enough. So I wrote back, Ryan, thank you for reaching out. I'm glad you're doing the work and finding clarity. I've been thinking a lot too. The way everything ended, with you telling me you couldn't be monogamous, that you needed multiple partners to be happy, those words don't just disappear. Even if you've changed your mind now, I would always wonder when the next shift would come. When the next video or book or conversation would rewrite the rules again. I can't build a marriage on that foundation. I genuinely wish you well, but I need to move forward. Lauren. His response came 10 minutes later. Just one line. You're giving up on us. I stared at it for a long moment before typing. You gave up on us when you made polyamory an ultimatum. I'm just accepting what you decided. He never replied. And I didn't expect him to. The universe didn't give me a dramatic epilogue. No big confrontation. No weepy apology on my doorstep. No, you were right text from his mother or his friend. Just life. Slow, steady, forward. I still think about him sometimes, not with longing, but with a kind of gentleness, a recognition that we were two people who wanted different things, and no amount of love or effort could bridge the gap between our needs. And honestly, I'm glad I learned that before walking down an aisle. The wedding deposits still sting, $2,000 gone to the void of what might have been, but money is easier to lose than your identity. Someone asked me recently if I'm against polyamory now. I said no. I'm not against any relationship structure that's honest and consensual. I'm against being pressured into one that violates my boundaries. That's allowed. It's human. It's healthy. I'm not healed all the way. Not yet. But I'm healing. There's a difference. And as for Ryan, well, last week he sent a message. Not dramatic, not desperate, just, hope you're doing okay. I stared at it for a long time. Then I hit delete. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but because there was nothing left to say. I'm moving forward. One day at a time, one breath at a time, one quiet, steady step into a future that finally feels like mine.